Secretary in the Gulf Division in Ministry of External Affairs, Government of India. Let me welcome Honorable Minister of State for External Affairs, Shri V. Muralidharanji, Secretary CPV and OIA in our ministry, Shri Sanjay Bhattacharya ji, Secretary General of FICCI, all the esteemed panelists who have joined us from various countries in the Gulf, our ambassadors in the Gulf, and viewers on our ministry's YouTube and Facebook channels for this panel discussion on India and the Gulf. As all of you know, we are doing these panel discussions in the run-up to the main Pravasi Bharatiya Divas conference that is going to be held in January 2021 in a month's time. As all of you know, the topic for the panel discussion this morning is India and the Gulf, leveraging energy partnerships, investment opportunities, and emerging technologies for Atmanirbhar Bharat. We will have another PBD panel discussion today afternoon, wherein we will be focusing on the skill sets that will be needed for Indians for their employment in the Gulf in future. So without further ado, let me request Honorable Minister Shri V. Muralidharanji to make a keynote address at the start of this panel discussion.
Secretary CPB and OIA in the Ministry of External Affairs, Shri Sanjay Bhattacharya, MD and CEO Invest India, Shri Deepak Bagla, Secretary General of FICCI, Shri Dilip Shinoy, Joint Secretary in the Gulf Division, Shri Vipul, esteemed panelists from across the GCC countries, our ambassadors and senior officials in the GCC, ladies and gentlemen, namaskaram to all of you. I am pleased to deliver this keynote address on how India and the Gulf countries can leverage their energy partnerships and utilize investment opportunities and emerging technologies towards Atmanirbhar Bharat. As you all know, this panel discussion has been organized in the run-up to the Pravasi Bharatiya Divas 2021, which will be organized next month. As such, one of our main goals is to consult prominent members of the Indian community in the Gulf region on the topic and to connect the community with Prime Minister's vision of Atmanirbhar Bharat. You are all aware of the clarion call given by Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji for Atmanirbhar Bharat even as India was grappling with the COVID-19 crisis. The aim is to make India self-reliant and not self-centered or inward-looking. India's global partnerships and connections will play an important role in realization of the vision of the Prime Minister. We believe that India's unique, historic, close and friendly relations with the Gulf countries place both sides in a position to realize and benefit from an Atmanirbhar Bharat. As Prime Minister has outlined, there are 5 pillars of Atmanirbhar Bharat, namely economy, infrastructure, technology in governance, demography, and demand. It's fairly intuitive to see that the Gulf countries and the Indian diaspora in these countries would relate to each of these 5 pillars. It's therefore not a surprise that Prime Minister Modi has attached the highest importance to India's relations with the Gulf region. This can be gauged from the fact that since 2014, Prime Minister himself has visited Bahrain, Oman, Qatar, Saudi Arabia and UAE, thereby strengthening our already strong relations with all these countries. We have also been honored to host visits at the highest level from several Gulf countries in the past few years. Many important agreements and MOUs have been signed, especially in the areas of trade and investment, infrastructure, energy, and strategic sectors and technologies. Our relations with UAE, Saudi Arabia, and Oman have been raised to strategic partnership. Besides our strong and historic people to people ties, energy has been the mainstay of India's relations with the Gulf countries. 53% of India's oil imports and 41% of gas imports come from the Gulf region. India will continue to need more energy, oil and gas based, as well as renewable, for its development needs. It's therefore a matter of great satisfaction that in the past few years, India and the Gulf countries have deepened their energy relationships and moved from a traditional buyer seller relationship to a more robust partnership. For instance, UAE for the first time offered Indian companies a 10% concession in the lower Zakum oil field during Prime Minister's visit to UAE in 2018. UAE has also invested in the strategic petroleum reserve of Government of India. A similar agreement was signed with Saudi Arabia in 2019. We also look forward to investments from UAE and Saudi Arabia for the large planned refinery in Maharashtra. In Prime Minister's telephone call with Qatar's Amir on December 8th, both countries resolved to explore Qatari investments in the entire energy value chain in India. The Gulf countries have also been generous in helping India in ensuring oil and gas supplies during the COVID-19 pandemic. Movement towards alternative energy sources is leading to a new partnership between India and the Gulf in renewable energy sources. Collaboration in solar and other renewable energy sources will provide future energy solutions to both sides. UAE, Saudi Arabia, and Oman have become member states of the International Solar Alliance, which was an initiative launched by India. We are hopeful that other Gulf countries will also become members soon. This will provide us an excellent framework to share experiences and best practices and launch joint projects in the field of solar energy. Both India and the Gulf countries have some of the largest solar parks and have shown leadership in utilizing technology to reduce solar energy cost. I am sure that we could similarly find opportunities to work together in other areas of renewable energy such as nuclear, wind, geothermal, and hydrogen. Atmanirbhar Bharat also provides a vision of India's plans to become a $5 trillion economy by promoting Make in India or Make for the World. In this endeavor, India will be dependent on attracting investments from its partners across the world, but in particular from the Gulf countries. The thrust will be on joint ventures in infrastructure and manufacturing, integrating into supply chains and tapping sovereign wealth funds. Some of the sunrise sectors identified by Government of India and which should be also be looked at by investors from the Gulf include food products, high efficiency solar PV cells, electronic and technology products, auto components, pharmaceuticals, telecom and networking products, specialty steels, white goods, and advanced chemical cell battery. I believe that food security and health security could emerge as big areas of cooperation between India and the Gulf. Indian doctors and nurses have already shown their mettle, including in the difficult circumstances of COVID-19 pandemic. Another focus will be on innovation and startups for entrepreneurial collaborations that are future oriented. The success of Indian startups in IT, e-commerce, hospitality, logistics, and others can leverage higher growth and economic ties. The Gulf countries, with their surplus capital, open economies, and connections with different regions of the world, such as Africa, Central Asia, and Europe, are well placed to partner with India in its quest. This is a win win proposition for both India and Gulf. We have already seen a quantum jump in investments from Gulf countries, both from sovereign wealth funds and large corporates into India. Abu Dhabi Investment Authority has emerged as a major investor in National Infrastructure Investment Fund and various Indian companies. Another iconic UAE company, DP World, is also investing through NIIF and directly in ports and other companies. Mubadala from UAE is also looking at various opportunities. You would have all seen the announcements from Saudi Arabia's Sovereign Wealth Fund PIF in companies such as Reliance and Oyo. Qatar Investment Authority has invested $600 million in 2 Indian companies. Kuwait Investment Authority has invested more than $3 billion in India. This provides only a snapshot, and I'm sure that we will continue to get more and more investments from Gulf into India. Government of India has already made special desks to look into investments from different countries. It will also be up to the Indian professionals working in the Gulf to keep the decision makers aware of the new opportunities in India. There are plenty of them today, and these will continue to grow in future. On the part of Government of India, I can assure you that our government remains committed to further improve ease of doing business and ease of living in India. Government has already brought in path-breaking reforms in several areas of the economy, including relaxation in FDI norms, manufacturing, taxation, banking laws, labor laws, mining and agriculture. We are confident that as normalcy returns after COVID-19 pandemic, we will go back on high economic growth path. While leveraging investments from the Gulf, India should also look at using its own competitive advantage in the areas of technology and human resources. New emerging technologies, especially in ICT, artificial intelligence, blockchain, consultancy, fintech, logistics, edutech, health tech, and biotech have enormous potential. These will promote efficiencies and assure future growth and development. In some ways, we need to transform a segment of our economic interaction to an ahead of the curve partnership focused on technology collaboration, R&D and high capacity intensive projects that drive future oriented growth. In this endeavor, we can build on the complementarities between India and the Gulf. India can contribute technology, human resources, and its large market, while the Gulf countries can easily bring in capital and innovation. Cooperation in high technology areas such as defense and space also has special potential to be stepped up. We have cooperation agreements in both sectors with many countries in the Gulf, and we need to use them to forge close partnerships. With the increased participation of private sector in these areas, the potential for cooperation is much higher. In defense, we can expand equipment and armament export as well as collaborations under Make in India. In space, where we are world leaders, there is potential for training, fabrication, and launch of satellites, use of satellite data, and others. COVID-19 caused unprecedented disruption across all sectors across the world, but it has also shown our interdependence, whether it be for energy supplies, food security, medical supplies, or vaccine research and production. India and the Gulf countries have worked together to tide over this unprecedented crisis. The Gulf countries took great care of the Indians in their countries, especially during the time we had lockdowns in India. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the Gulf leadership for their generosity. On our part, we also ensured that supply chains, especially on food and medicines, between India and the Gulf continue uninterrupted despite the lockdowns in India. We also made sure that Indian medical professionals are able to return to the Gulf countries. While showing our interdependence, COVID 19 also showed that the world needs diverse sources of supplies in all areas and not be overtly dependent on overly dependent on one or a few. I feel that India and the Gulf countries can together provide diversified sources, whether in the field of energy, food, or medicine. The challenge is only how we transform and gear ourselves to leverage our position, our relations for our benefit and to the benefit of our partner countries on the way towards an Atmanirbhar Bharat and a $5 trillion economy in the shorter term. I'm sure today's discussions will bring out some creative suggestions in this regard. Thank you all.
Well, thank you, Honorable Minister, for your keynote address. We would now want to move ahead on our panel discussion. And the first speaker on our panel discussion today morning is Mr. Dilip Chenoy, who is the Secretary General of Federation of Indian Chambers of Commerce and Industry. He's also someone who is very related to the United Arab Emirates currently, because FICCI is a partner for the Expo 2020 for Government of India. Before joining FICCI, Mr. Dilip Chenoy has also served as MD and CEO of NSDC, the National Skill Development Corporation. He's also been involved with various bodies, SIAM, Harvard Business School, and he is also advising many of the startups. I would now request him to make a few remarks at the start of this panel discussion.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that introduction. Sri Muralidharanji, Honorable Minister of State for External Affairs, Sri Sanjay Bhattacharya, Secretary, Joint Secretary Sri Vipul, Deepak, all the other distinguished heads of mission in India and our heads of mission in the Gulf. Very good morning to all of you. It's a privilege to actually participate and address this webinar. As the minister said, and I want to actually just paraphrase that our relationship with the Gulf focused initially on three broad areas. One was trade, other was oil, and then was the focus on expatriates, the traditional thing. So it is, if I take the acronym, you can be TOE, which is a toe, right? So we were only exploring the bottom end of the relationship. We have not really expanded it to go forward. And I believe we need to take this and transform this going forward. Today, the Gulf is an extended part of our neighborhood. Just as we have a special priority for the East, we also have it for the Arab world in our Look West policy. It is reflecting our policy going forward. More increasingly, as mentioned by the Honorable Minister, our economic engagement is characterized by energy security, food security, including building a food security corridor, human resource exchanges, growing trade and investment relationship, and building a strong connectivity with the region. Traditionally, of course, the Gulf region was key suppliers of energy and also remittances. But although hydrocarbons form the bulk of the trade, between 52%, the basket has diversified in the recent years to engineering goods, gems and jewelry, precious metals, and other areas. As the Honorable Minister said, we have a lot of sovereign funds also investing in India. The nature of the partnership has actually evolved from mere buyer and seller participation in the upstream and downstream projects and joint ventures in refineries and of building strategic oil reserves. We are also have an investment and a partnership in renewables, and of course, as the minister mentioned, the cooperation under the umbrella of the Indian International Solar Alliance, where we also request other countries to actually join. I think the sovereign wealth funds over the last few years have been investing. We have looked at the positive trend in the portfolio investment. Key sectors that they're looking at was power, renewable, metallurgical, real estate, and construction, services, and IT. They're also looking at some startups. And recently, in the introduction, you had mentioned about Dubai. The World Expo has selected a few Indian startups to display at the World Expo in Dubai during the period. And I think the startup intervention can actually increase. On food security, we remain a trusted partner and a long-term reliable source of food exports to the Gulf. This relationship can develop by looking at mutual investments, although it's become stronger in the past. We're looking at specific connectivity, establishment of joint ventures, and not across the value chain, but also in back end with the states and the local bodies in agriculture. Of course, the procurement of fertilizer and raw materials and import from region continues, and we need to see how we can look at diversifying this, because the number of molecules is pretty limited. We need to go beyond that. Gas is another area we can look in the future. The demand in India is actually increasing. During the COVID, of course, both oil and gas prices have bolstered the competitive position of gas and unlocked the purchasing power for more sensitive LNG buyers. But we need to look at strategic pipelines between the region. Both India and other countries have been evaluating a number of options for gas supply through transnational gas pipelines. Many of the transnational pipelines proposed in the past have challenges of security or logistics or economics that have not progressed much. And therefore, there is a need, not only as the minister mentioned, for defense cooperation. We should look at areas of security cooperation where we can make some of these deep water pipelines, whether it's the Oman to India or the Middle East India deep water pipeline, which could potentially strengthen and promote commercial and cultural ties between the Gulf region and India. In the renewable energy sector, we had attracted significant investment. Over 10 million man days of employment per annum have been created here. It is one sector which has got a lot of foreign direct investment, and we have had even sovereign wealth funds invest in this sector. There is a need for greater cooperation between center and state to ensure the stability and the continuance of contracts in this region. It's very easy to say it in a speech, but very difficult to actually do it in practice. But we all need to work together to enable that to grow. I think different countries in the region have transformed themselves from trading hubs to media, entertainment, education, and tourism centers. These services, other than IT services, which have been in the past, offer new areas of collaboration going forward. And looking at sustainability and commitment to diversity and inclusion in this whole area can be something which both of us could work together. Indian corporate presence in the region has grown in the traditional sectors of construction, FMCG, IT, ITES, banking, power. But the potential has not been realized, whether we look at the healthcare or pharmaceuticals, etc. As the minister mentioned during the COVID crisis, the whole area of health and pharmaceutical supplies had a new dimension. This could be a further area for a strategic partnership amongst the countries in the region and here, and help building national healthcare systems across the region. including entrepreneurship and skill development going forward. All medium and small enterprises in India are also looking for new business partnerships around the world. We feel that organizations such as FICCI could help matchmaking in this going forward. I believe that there are a few key elements of the future endeavors, and I'll just end with these 4 bullet points. We need to expand the joint ventures and in infrastructure and manufacturing. We need to expand tapping of the sovereign wealth funds and integrating them into the supply chains here, and also look at the high network individuals and institutions in India, in the region. Another focus could be the whole area of innovation and startups. Entrepreneurial collaborations are future-oriented. I had mentioned the startups that had been taken for the Dubai Expo, whether it's in IT, e-commerce, hospitality, logistics, and others. New and emerging technologies, especially in artificial intelligence, virtual intelligence, machine learning, fintech, logistics, edutech. This whole thing of where the BHIM application was accepted in the UAE. Can we look at expanding this cooperation going forward? As the Honorable Minister mentioned, defense and space and security are high priority sectors of cooperation where both the Indian private sector and the defense undertakings could play a major role. We need to focus on specialized equipments and processes for exports, and of course, training of launch satellites, sharing of satellite data. The Honorable Minister mentioned that, so I will not repeat that. With both India and the Gulf region engaged in reforms and transformational changes in the economy, the strong potential and political understanding and goodwill between the leadership provides an opportunity to build a people-to-people connect and raise the economic engagement to a higher level. As I mentioned, we started with trade, oil, and expatriates. We need to move to high network individuals and institutions. We need to ensure that existing investments have a stability and growth so they attract fresh investment. We need to form alliances to address the third country markets. India, like for example, there's an international mart in Dubai. We could have an India mart in Dubai going forward and look at accessing the region and other Africa and other areas, and diversity of engagement, both sectors and beyond diaspora. So we have to move from POE to high network, which is the H, existing investment stability, which is the E, alliances, which is the A, and diversity, which is D. So move from toe to head. Thank you very much for this opportunity, and I'll be there to answer any questions to the leaders. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Mr. Dilip Chinoy, for a very insightful address. Of course, you've identified a lot of sectors, including food security, gas, renewable energy, services, and given a lot of concrete recommendations that we would surely include in our outcome from this panel discussion. So thank you once more from our side. And of course, please stay back should there be questions that may be addressed to you. I would now request Mr. Varun Sood. Mr. Deepak Bagla has not been able to join us. Mr. Varun Sood is the Vice President of Invest India. And from my tenure in Dubai, I know that he also looks acutely at the Gulf region. He's been a frequent visitor there. So I would request him to make a few remarks now. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Honorable Minister, Secretary MEA, Joint Secretary Gulf, Indian ambassadors and senior officials from our high commissions abroad, industry leaders, and distinguished panelists. A very good morning. As Joint Secretary Gulf mentioned, Mr. Bagla unfortunately is unwell. He was looking forward to this particular discussion and the panel. So I'll be representing Invest India. For those who are not aware, Invest India is a national investment promotion and facilitation agency of the government, which is looking after the Make in India program execution. One of the key elements that we focus is to bring in more foreign direct investment. And as the Honorable Minister and Secretary General FICCI had earlier mentioned, there are 3 and 5 key pillars which kind of ties up the partnership between Gulf and India. According to us, the government to government connect is something which is very critical. And with the relationship that we already share with the Gulf nations, which is strengthening day by day, we can see that effect coming into play. The second important pillar is the people to people connect. Most of these Gulf countries have the highest number of Indian diaspora living in there. And that is something which brings us the cultural aspect and the strong ties within the people in those particular countries. And the final element that I wanted to touch upon today is the business to business element. And that is something which is critical. As we rightly mentioned, the theme of this particular discussion is partnership and investment opportunities and leveraging emerging technologies. So this is the real opportunities for these businesses to come together, collaborate. As the Honorable Minister mentioned, the global partnerships are something which can lead the way to the future as well. So just to give you a quick overview, Invest India currently has been facilitating close to around $21 billion worth of investments from the Gulf nation itself, which is estimated to generate close to around 3 lakh plus jobs in the country as well. Some of the key marquee names that we are working in the past and we've been engaged from the Gulf region includes Sipcam, Aramco from Saudi, UAE we have been working very closely with DP World, Sharaf, Lulu, MR Group as well. And Oman and Kuwait, we have Bhavan and Al Futtaw Holdings and Caron Life Sciences. All these companies have some kind of a setup or they're looking at huge potential opportunities into India. And Invest India is there to kind of support and handhold them in understanding the landscape of the market, understanding the regulation, meeting the key stakeholders and ensuring that their projects gets grounded immediately as well. The other thing that we wanted to briefly touch upon today is that, with the Honorable PM visiting all these nations, tie-ups have strengthened in the past. For example, the Saudi, the Honorable Minister mentioned about the investments coming in from their sovereign wealth funds, especially PIF looking into infrastructure, technology, and healthcare investments. The commitment given by Saudi for $100 billion, our team, we have a special foreign institutional investors team, which have been working very closely with PIF, had multiple rounds of discussions to understand some of their concerns and how to kind of ensure that this commitment materializes into investments on ground. The other key element is UAE, where $75 billion investment commitment has been given by the highest level to the government of India. Again, as the Honorable Joint Secretary Sir mentioned, during his tenure as CG Dubai, we had the opportunity to kind of work very closely under his guidance and the Honorable Ambassador during the high-level task forum, where we met all these investors to understand some of the key concerns and what could be done to kind of ensure that there's ease of doing business on the ground and these challenges are an impediment to growth are resolved. So that this $75 billion worth of investment flows into the country. The other key element that's there is that the Invest India, had an opportunity to sign an MOU with the Ministry of Artificial Intelligence in UAE to look at the healthcare sector. I think Mr. Chinoy mentioned that healthcare is one critical area that we need to look at and find new avenues to explore as well. We do have a lot of interest coming from most of the Gulf nations. For example, from Saudi, we've received around 88 investment interests ranging in the sectors such as food processing, IT, BPM, construction and retail and tourism. In UAE, the focus has been again on food, construction, retail, tourism and energy. Similarly, we've seen that there are certain critical sectors which have been, very prominent for once these investors are looking to come and enter the Indian market. Talking about the energy theme, nearly 40% of India's crude oil is imported from the Gulf countries itself. And there are a lot of partnerships which are happening in the downstream petrochemical, fertilizers and energy initiatives. The Omifeco fertilizer plant in Oman is one good example. The government of Oman has collaborated with Indian company to kind of take it forward. The emerging technologies that we are seeing trend is coming up in the PLI for large-scale electronics manufacturing, the phase-linked incentive plan which the government has launched, and especially in the 10 key sectors that they're focusing on, there's a huge opportunity for these investors to come and manufacture in India and then not only export to GCC, but to Africa and other parts of the world as well. We're also looking at leveraging the Data Center Policy 2020, the National Strategy on Artificial Intelligence, the National Strategy on Blockchain, to understand how we can bring in those investments into the country as well. In my closing remarks, I just want to touch upon the recent, UNCTAD, which is the agency appointed by UN, looking after more than 180 nations and covering their investment promotion agency. Invest India has been awarded the best IPA agency for 2020 to the kind of response we had for during the COVID pandemic situation. The business immunity platform, the impact that we had on not only the businesses but the life of a common citizen was actually appreciated at the highest level. And going by the PM's, the Honorable Prime Minister's vision on ease of living and ease of doing business, which is bringing the excellence into the government. We believe this award is a big testimonial to the changes that are happening on the ground. And we'll be there, Invest India is there to support the investors and work very closely with our missions and partners in ensuring that these investments get grounded in India as soon as possible. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Well, thank you, Varun. Of course, Invest India has been doing a wonderful job in terms of hand-holding the concerns of investors from various Gulf countries as well as from other countries. And I would like to thank you for your work on this as well. Of course, you've gone into various areas in which investments can further come from Gulf countries, and that will be that's been very useful. We would now move to our panelists who are very eminent and who've joined us from various Gulf countries. The first, and we are going alphabetical in terms of countries. So the first one is Mr. Mohammad A. Dadabhai, chairman of Dadabhai Group, one of the most distinguished Indians, shall I call, but he's a Bahraini national. He's been the chairman of Dadabhai Group, which is one of the Kingdom of Bahrain's most acclaimed business conglomerates. He's been former member of the Shura Council, but remains very engaged with the Indian community. And I would request him to make his remarks in this panel discussion.
Good morning, sir. It's first of all, I would like to thank Honorable Minister Mr. Muralidharan for giving me an opportunity to be a part of this discussion. Yes, I am very proud that I am a Bahraini but of Indian origin. And that helps me a lot when it comes to the relation between Bahrain and Gulf, Bahrain and India, and Gulf also, because as a Bahraini national, we have an access of same opportunities in the whole of Gulf. I must tell you, sir, that Your Excellency, the Minister knows that Bahrain is the most tolerant place. Honorable Prime Minister visited last year and he inaugurated a extension of a temple which is 200 years old. We have got a synagogue for the Jews, and it goes on. The country has got a freedom of religion which attracts people for investment to come, as well as they are always keen to do business and relationship with India, because half of the population of Bahrain are Indians. And as I said earlier in one of my interactions lecture, that every Bahraini family has got an Indian. It starts from his kitchen to his car to his accounts, and it goes on. So India and Bahrain have that strong relations which Bahrain doesn't have with any country. In the pretext of that, the things as Bahrain is changing now. Our Prime Minister Sheikh Salman, who is now just taken over because of we lost our Prime Minister. He is a very, very visionary man, and he has a great bond with India. He has gone, particularly after he's gone to Kerala when I was with him, and His Majesty the King came to India. So the bond of relation between, coming back to the point, is always very strong. And in the pretext of that, people like us, we always make a bridge to get more and more opportunities for both the Indian companies and both the Bahraini companies, how they can move forward with the time in the terms of such growing economic which we required. Unfortunately, it has been because of this COVID, things have slowed down, but I can see that Bahrain today needs a lot of solar energy joint ventures. We have sun, we have a very good weather, and equally there is another sector which is very important, which Bahrain is looking forward for, is the pharma sector. So these two sectors, even from our side, are looking forward, and they want, their first priority is India. And I think through this, my participation, I would like to pass on this message to all the seniors, gentlemen who are from FICCI and other related organizations, and Honorable Minister also is here, that Bahrain is open in the terms of full participation. You don't require any local participations, and they support you as much as they support. So an opportunity for the Indian entrepreneurs are always there. Coming back to Bahrain is looking forward to go to India, yes, but as we all know that we don't have that huge financial resources like other Gulf countries has. But nevertheless, the Bahrainis are very well, highly educated community. They always look forward of creating where the organizations of two countries, how they can grow. So I personally, is my feeling that this is an opportunity to see that the sectors which I said, like pharma and solar, of course, these are the two sectors. Again, coming back to education, we are recently have started a very high-end school, and this is also a very important sector for Bahrain because they need the community to grow more in the terms of education. Also, there are areas like IT technology and all, which Bahrain needs complete support of India. And I think that at the moment we have got, there are organizations in Bahrain like Lulu, and there are a few of them. Shapoorji Pallonji is building the biggest mall in Bahrain, which is bigger than the Dubai Mall. And there are areas where the Indian entrepreneurs can always come and see the opportunities available in Bahrain. Our sector, we are in construction and development, and also we also have a very prominent travel. We have got about 17 branches, and our Adabai Travels was involved recently in the repatriation of so many of Indians. So we created about 200 flights, and they have been doing an excellent job in coordination with the embassies all around in the Gulf. And these are the sectors I can see that the entrepreneurs from India and institutions from India can look into Bahrain, and Bahrain and India can build up a strong ties in all these sectors. Whenever I get an opportunity, I always bring to the attention that, of course, there are Dubai and all these places, but what Bahrain has got an opportunity is, again, it is connected with Saudi Arabia. In 20 minutes, you are in Saudi Arabia, and the frequency between the bridge. So most of the other organizations from other world, they have their base offices in Bahrain. And similarly, yes, there are Indian institutions have started that, but in the pretext of this opportunity which I got, I would like to mention that Kuwait, Saudi Arabia are all connected with roads. Kuwait is about 3 hours by road. Saudi Arabia, as I said. So Bahrain is a center of all these activities for Indian institutions. And I think that my feeling is that with the time to come, And yes, lately when Prime Minister Modi came to Bahrain, it was again where we developed our relations. We had Foreign Minister Mr. Jaishankar was here last week. So these relations are increasing. And in the pretext of this, of course, ultimately we can say that how the Indian institutions can base here and work side by side, of course, opportunities which Honorable Minister said for India, people definitely here look into it. And we also have our government financial institutions, and on that level, that is a different level of how to participate. But I'm coming back to the entrepreneurs level, which we are, that there is a lot of opportunity which can be looked into Bahrain. And I think I'm again thankful to all of Honorable Minister, our ambassador in Bahrain, Mr. Piyush, and I personally feel that we look forward again to discuss on these things. That on a personal note, I can tell you that I'm being a Bahraini of an Indian origin. My services are always there whenever I'm there, and I must say that inshallah, hopefully, this relation has been very good in the past and now, and it will grow in future. On this note, I thank once again all of you. Thank you, sir.
Well, thank you, Mr. Dadabhai. And please keep the Indian and the Bahraini flag flying high in Bahrain. Of course, you mentioned about Honorable Foreign Minister's, Honorable External Affairs Minister's visit to Bahrain recently. And I was part of that visit, and the warmth with which he was received by the leadership of the country augurs very well for our future collaboration. Of course, we have historic relations, and you've identified a few sectors such as solar, pharma, education, and entrepreneurship, in which people from the two countries can work together. Thank you very much. And now we would move to Mr. Samir Ketkar, who is Senior Associate with Worldly Advisory in Oman. He is a strategy practitioner with financial advisory experience and continues to engage in consulting and leadership roles. And he has a very deep background on various issues related to business and related to India-Oman relations. So I would give the floor to him now to make his remarks.
Thank you, sir. Namaste all the eminent panelists as well as heads of missions. Thank you for having me. This is Samir from Muscat. My topic today is on oil and why we need to still look back at oil as main contributor to Atmanirbhar Bharat vision. So, in a sense, oil has been changing. Yeah. What has been happening is oil has not remained so easy to extract, and it has now emerged into a second domain where the enhanced oil recoveries are now the need of the hour. So if you see Oman and its oil reserves, it essentially has these technologies as a prerequisite for many of their reservoirs, and the need is growing. The technologies can be brought in by Indian businessmen, but essentially our presence is limited. That is the start moot point. Basically, why we have to look back at what we are doing in this oil and gas sector. So at the start, I must declare that I'm not representing my company here. I've come here to the panel discussion on the basis that we remain as Indian diaspora a contributor to Indian economy in one way or the other. And we have a moral obligation of protecting India's interests wherever we go. So with that basis and being an engineer, so expect expect some technical and implementation kind of a skew in my presentation. Presentation is very brief, 4 or 5 slides to cover my 6 minutes of presentation. So in a sense, if we look at countries' budgets, and Oman is a good example of that, we are trying to diverse here beyond oil and gas, but currently we remain 70% dependent as a oil and gas being a main revenue getter. So investments are required in this sector, and to sustain oil productions, that is going to be very important going forward. So Oman's upstream play is basically kind of a beacon light for GCC, how the things will grow here. So enhanced oil recovery technologies are essentially required. Oil and gas play needs some serious investments. This space has been dominated by Western or classical oil and gas players, be it international oil companies or national oil companies having their stake. Now, what is happening is on the technological entry point, we see that Indian investors have started taking stakes in oil and gas, and some blocks are also being open. Energy security for Atmanirbhar Bharat vision of India is very important. As we grow, as we become $5 trillion economy, our needs will be enormous as well. So our focus to sustain on hydrocarbon production levels require leaner operations here. And this is where we can contribute. The Gulf is moving towards low price of oil as far as the production cost is concerned, because there are pressures on the oil price, and oil price is remaining range bound and low as well to moderate. Yeah. So more streamlined corporate structures and budgets for astute financial arrangements to sustain leaning of these upstream businesses is required. Oman is investing in these technologies firsthand. Yeah. So the oil sands in Canada or heavy oils in America, such as Texas and California, those are being implemented here, and for last 15 years this has been the focus, and it has started showing quite good results, and this contributes oil exports. So the oil which has been exported say 15-20 years before had changed its dimension. Yeah, it is not flowing naturally. It needs these technologies, thermal injections, steam injections, chemical injections, gas injection to bring out oil. And at the same time, the companies are looking at farming out certain blocks, and also they are attracting investments. So they are creating contracting strategies such as fully owned operations, deboom type contracts, lease licenses. Yes, we know that there are entry barriers, but for India and the Gulf, we have special relations. Oman-India relations also are centuries old, and we need to take advantage. Our people are predominantly seen in these sectors, but our companies do lag in their investments. So we have opportunity there because sooner or the later, these things will become important. I'll quickly scan through these three focus areas. Chemical AOR requires certain technologies and certain equipments. And if we look at India's technological foray, we should not be behind on these. These are pretty good technologies to invest in. We already have these in different downstream and different industrial sectors. So we need to bring it together, say water treatments, oil treatments, disposals, gas exports, things like that. Thermal also, we need steam generators, water treatments, and similar technologies. So you see that this is nothing new for India. This is pretty straightforward looking investment area. The entry point is very important, and we need to invest because this requires serious investment. Self-reliant India's dreams can't be realized, I feel, without de-risking hydrocarbon imports, and EOR investments can enable a vantage point. Because what is happening in Oman currently would happen in other Gulf nations, and we would need imported oil for our sustained $5 trillion economy and to get there. So higher oil prices are not currently prevalent. So the pressure on costing is there. So these portfolio techniques can bring these Oman GCC relationship to a investor relationship more than consumer supplier, as mentioned by a few eminent panelists before. So I would plead that we should make use of current situations, that there is upskilling requirements, localization efforts in Oman and also in GCC. So we should take part there with our knowledge economy and having a holistic perspective and looking at ICV in positivity. Aggressive investment mechanisms are being looked at, which I've just explained with the ownerships and project delivery contracts, stakes in the oil blocks. Yeah. So with this, I come to my end of presentation, and further discussion and further Q&A is welcome on this front. Jai Hind. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you, Mr. Samir Ketkar, and thank you for reminding the continued importance of oil in our developmental needs and how we can use our knowledge-based economy and go beyond the kind of what we say as buyer-seller relationship on the oil side with the Gulf countries. So thank you once again. I would now like to invite Mr. Pradeep Honda, who is the General Manager and Head of Foreign Corporate at National Bank of Kuwait, for his presentation and comments. Thank you.
Well, thank you, sir. Thank you very much for the invitation. Honorable Minister of State, Mr. Muralidharan, senior officials of Ministry of External Affairs, ambassadors, Indian ambassadors in the region, fellow panelists and speakers, a very good morning to all of you from Kuwait. As mentioned, my name is Pradeep Honda. I'm part of the executive management of National Bank of Kuwait, and also I head one of the business groups as general manager. My presentation on the topic under discussion today is from a Kuwaiti perspective. So let me just upload my presentation. Okay. All right. Thank you. I would like to start with some high-level facts about Kuwait, which has relevance to India. To start with, the total population of Kuwait is 4.5 million, out of which Kuwaitis constitute 1.4 million, which is about 31% of the total population, and Indians 1.1 million, which is about 24% of the total populations. Indians are the largest foreign community in Kuwait. Now, Indian workforce remits approximately US dollars $4.5 billion annually to India. Again, Kuwait is very much dependent on oil. The current crude production amounts to approximately 2.3 million barrels per day, out of which 315,000 barrels a day is exported to India, which amounts to almost 13 to 14% of Kuwait's total crude production. Kuwait is the 10th largest supplier of crude to India and meets almost 4% of India's overall energy needs. The bilateral trade between India and Kuwait comes to around 10.8 billion, out of which imports to Kuwait are around 1.3 billion, and exports from Kuwait, predominantly oil, 9.5 billion. The known oil reserves of Kuwait are about 102 billion barrels, and at current rate of production, they can last well over 100 years for Kuwait. Kuwait ranks 6th among the countries with largest oil reserves in the world, and it is OPEC's 3rd largest producer. Now, the relationship between India and Kuwait has been very historical. There were strong maritime and cultural links during the pre-oil era. India was a natural trading partner of Kuwait at that time. Kuwait was exporting dates and pearls to India, and in turn, importing cereals, clothes, and spices. Also, a very important factor, Indian rupee was a legal tender in Kuwait till 1961. And this is when Kuwait gains its independence from the British rule, that the Kuwaiti dinar was introduced at that point. National Bank of Kuwait was the first local bank to be established, and it was the first joint stock company to be established in the whole of the region. And as you notice on the right side of the slide, the first balance sheet of NBK, which was in 1953, is denominated in Indian rupees, and right up to 61, all our balance sheets were in Indian rupees. The topic of discussion today focuses on energy partnerships, investment opportunities, and technologies. And I think the best way to tackle this is to look at synergies between Kuwait and India in these areas, and also the way forward. Talking first of energy partnerships, Kuwait has an economy which is highly dependent on oil. 95% of the state revenues are generated from oil. Therefore, the need is to continue producing, selling, and generating revenue from oil. And in order to achieve that, the strategy of the state is to seek as much as possible sustainable, long-term outlets of Kuwaiti crude in overseas markets, and for which they are looking at building partnerships, particularly in the downstream area. And these include areas like refining, retail distribution, and petrochemicals, or even strategic storage facilities. Now, how does India fit into this equation? India is obviously looking for energy security. Therefore, India is a good match for what Kuwait is targeting, obviously. Kuwait Petroleum Corporation, which is the state-owned top oil holding company of the country, has been trying for many years to get a foothold in India. And if my memory serves me right, going back to 1990s, they were even looking at investments in refineries coming up in Panipat and Mathura at that stage. Unfortunately, they have not been very successful, or successful at all, to be putting it bluntly. And when we talk to them, they say that it is very challenging when it comes to India, even though they have already done a few investments on the downstream side in other countries in the world. Among other things, they say that it is difficult to deal with the bureaucracy. There's a lack of transparency in what they are getting into. And they look for incentives, which they say lack when they go to India. We look at the investments now. We talked about sovereign wealth funds, and Honorable Minister also mentioned sovereign wealth funds. Kuwait has one of the oldest and largest sovereign wealth funds in the world. It is managed by Kuwait Investment Authority, which is an arm of the Ministry of Finance in Kuwait. And currently it manages a portfolio of over 600 billion US dollars. Now, most of these investments are earmarked for future generations. So obviously the objective is very clear that they would like to have them as secure and stable as possible and with a decent return on capital. But when we look on the other side, India, current investments in India by KIA are a mere $5 billion, out of which $2 billion came in recent years only. And I think we need to seriously work in this area. And we believe that there is very good potential to grow when it comes to attracting sovereign wealth fund. The third aspect deals with technology and development. And again, when we look at Kuwait, the Kuwait's 2035 vision is to transform Kuwait into a major regional leading financial and commercial hub. The intention is to take advantage of its strategic geographical location. Besides being very well connected with the Gulf countries, it is connected to Iraq with common borders, and through that to countries in the Levant and CIS countries as well. Unlike some of the other countries in the region, it has a democratic system of government, and it has one of the oldest judicial systems, very fairly comprehensive, and a very balanced foreign policy. The population is very young, and it needs facilities like education. There's a need for healthcare facilities, creation of jobs, new townships, like housing facilities, etc., are the need. It is looking, therefore, to engage with private sector, not necessarily Kuwait, but across the world, and form partnerships. And needless to say, the focus, and very strong focus, is also on technology and digitalization. Now, on the flip side, when we look at India, Indian manpower is in the forefront, helping all these developments. But when we look at whether the manpower is being matched by companies or corporations who can provide comprehensive solutions for the development, and also, equally important, the ability to compete with other global companies or corporations, there is very little available. Unfortunately, when we look at the landscape, the business landscape, other than Larsen & Toubro, when we talk about major comprehensive solution providers, there is very little available when it comes to India. Key takeaways, therefore, in my opinion, are that while we have lots of opportunities in Kuwait and vice versa for mutual benefit, we need to first and foremost, and on a fast-track basis, work in India as well in areas like infrastructure development, industrial development, education reforms, social reforms, building world-class corporations, and take care of our red tape, bureaucracy, and be transparent. And I believe that this will automatically lead to greater potential across the board and ultimately to our goal, which is Atmanirbhar Bharat. And with this, I conclude my presentation. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Mr. Pradeep Honda, for your presentation and reminding us of the historic relations between India and the Gulf. I think this is one of the biggest strengths that is there between India and the Gulf countries, and that is to be continuously built upon. You've also presented a framework of how to think about the issue by developing synergies between India and Kuwait or India and the Gulf countries, thinking each issue separately. And of course, you have made some suggestions, including on reducing red tape, bureaucracy, and I can say that that is reflected, I think, in the strides that we have made on the ease of doing business. And I think everyone knows about it under the leadership of Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji. I would now give the floor to Mr. Nishad Azim, who is the CEO of Coastal Qatar. He has over 20 years of professional experience in construction industry, oil and gas, and has also created several joint ventures. They call their company Coastal Qatar as the Challengineers, and I think that's a fantastic word that they have coined. I think they're also involved in some ways with the FIFA World Cup. I was going through their website, and without saying much further, let me give the floor to him to make his presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister, Mr. Muralidharan, heads of mission, members of Pravasi Bharat, and distinguished panelists. It's indeed a pleasure to be part of this panel discussion. And my presentation would be on two parts. One would be on the partnership section, and the other would be on the investment part. And as you know, we have, the reason I want to spend more time on the investment part is because I think that's an area where we need to have more clarity, and there's not enough content on the how part. There is a lot of what we need to do, but how do we do that? That's where I think we need to look at more closely. So if you would let me share my presentation real quickly. So as we said, we're talking about the leveraging of energy partnership and investment opportunities. And as like the moderator said, you know, we are a company called Coastal Qatar. We are manufacturing the stadium seats for 6 of the 7 stadiums in Qatar. So it's locally manufactured with a technology partnership with a foreign company. So we are into manufacturing, construction, healthcare, and trading. So going to the leveraging of the energy partnership real quickly. As we know, India is the largest consumer of, one of the largest consumer of energy in the world, and we're moving towards gas-based economy and to planning to have about 15% of our energy coming from gas. On the other hand, Qatar is the largest producer of natural gas in the world, and we have a project called North Field Expansion Project, which is ongoing right now, with which the capacity would be increased from 77 million tons per annum to 110 in phase 1, and then will go on to 126 million tons per annum in phase 2. So as you can see, there is a sort of a supply demand. There is an increase in supply or production from Qatar, and then we're forecasting an increase in demand from India. So that opens up a lot of opportunities for partnership and synergies. One could be to build, you know, the infrastructure. You know, as we know, when we transport liquefied natural gas, it needs to be frozen, and then it needs to be sort of regasified. So that's a huge infrastructure investment, which Qatar could be a potential partner in that. The other opportunity could be for the expanding the national gas pipeline grid to the different corners of the country, and also the network within the cities, which would make gas more accessible to the general public in a more efficient and an economical way. So this sort of allows for Qatar to sort of increase the demand for the particular product, and this can sort of have a better opportunity for partnership. Another one area where India could contribute is to be a regional hub for the distribution of gas. Because of a geographical positioning, we are well poised to distribute gas to neighboring countries like Nepal, Bhutan, Bangladesh, and Sri Lanka, and more so to the landlocked countries like Nepal and Bhutan. And I would think that a connection or a land route would be more economical than a sea route to countries like Bangladesh. So there exists a lot of opportunities on that front. And also, in terms of the emerging technologies, there is a lot of opportunities coming up related to World Cup. It could be even in terms of accommodation, ticketing, booking, those sort of different areas where Indian companies could look into as opportunities in Qatar. And we are actually currently looking at a team which would be focusing on this element. Now, going on to the next section of my presentation, which is on investment for Atmanirbhar India. And this is more of a case study because we as Coastal Qatar, we have an ongoing project in India which comes under Atmanirbhar. And it is relatively, geared towards India being more self-reliant in certain product. And as I would like to, borrow from Steve Jobs, what he said is, ideas are worth nothing if not unless executed. And that's where I think we need to have more emphasis as Indian or government agencies to support more investment to come into India. So I think we're all familiar with the 5 pillars of Atmanirbhar, and I would stress more on the infrastructure, where I think we have a huge deficit, and it should form the backbone of any economy. And I think there's huge opportunities there. Another one also in terms of our customer base. I think India has a huge customer base, which has not been exactly leveraged or exploited to its full extent. And in any situation, when you are looking at self-reliant or to promote self-reliancy, the first thing you would look at, what are you not self-reliant on? And if you look at the imports in 2019 for India, top 15, that could be a starting point. And you'll see a huge variance in the type of products that we import. For example, oil is almost 3 times what we are importing in terms of the second one, which is gold. So any small dent in that area would contribute to a huge self-reliancy. And it doesn't necessarily have to be in terms of replacing oil. It could be a substitute for oil. So in terms of renewable energy or any other form which will reduce the consumption of oil. Another one, if you look at item number 14, nitrogenous fertilizer, we have 117% increase in that. So this could be a starting point for us to look at, what can we do to reduce the reliance on these imports to our country. And for us, when we were looking at the project, the key consideration that we had, or the key parameters we looked at were, one, of course, this product has to be imported in substantial quantities. We needed to have critical mass to allow for economies of scale in terms of production. The other one was greater time of horizon. If anyone wants to invest in a product or start manufacturing a product, you need to look at the demand. Is it a periodic demand? Is it going to be a long-term demand, or is the demand going to increase? And for our product, we found that there's going to be an increased demand for this particular product. And we wanted to convert with our project from India being an importer of this product to an exporter. So that was another consideration. We looked at the demand globally in the neighboring countries and across the globe in terms of what is the demand of this product. And since we're looking at also export, the standards of the product has to be global. And since we are not manufacturing it locally, then that means we don't have the know-how or the technology, for this production. So we are able to find a company which is a global leader in this product to work with us on this project. And then, of course, the standard requirements in terms of raw materials, skilled manpower, and infrastructure was another consideration. Financing options, debt equity, cost of capital, all is another consideration which you would need to look into. And another very important part, especially for people who are sitting in this part of the world, is on clarity on the regulation and the permits and controls that are there back in India. So this is another area where I think investors should need to spend substantial time to understand. And another one which I borrowed from one of the other presenters I saw is ROTI, which calls for return on time invested. This is another consideration if you are looking at investing or making a project in India versus other parts of the world. What would be your return on your time invested? Because that's another resource that any investor would like to look into. What went well? We had really a good team from the Qatar ambassador support and also the embassy team who were really proactive and supportive. And they in turn introduces us to the Invest India team. And I was in touch with Varun Sood, and I'm really amazed and really thankful for their continued support and their enthusiasm and their zest for bringing more investment into India. We had a few parks that we looked at. They were up to standard, to international standards. We had some challenges in the land size because we had a long process line and it wasn't similar to the standard plots that were available. And we had the support from the local team to get those land for us. And the location was pretty good connectivity, good roads, which helped us. And this is what went well. But at the same time, like I said, we need to look in more closely in terms of the house. We have good ideas, we have good concepts, but unless we are able to execute them efficiently, it may not attract the right kind of investments that you need. So I have a few suggestions which I'd like to put forward to the team for consideration. And these are coming from our personal experience on what we went through. And this is something that will be really valuable if it is taken to heart for the future investors. One is, all the projects are considered similar. So if you have a project that is of strategic importance that comes under Atmanirbhar, we should have a system to identify that this is a project that it can be categorized as an Atmanirbhar project. Once that is done, you could fast track the project with clear deadlines and closing dates at each stage. So this would make it much faster for investors to come in and pick these projects and make it more viable or attractive to the investors. Like I said, the Invest India team was exceptionally good, but there's a disconnect with the state team. So if you had, and we had to go back and forth many times between the state and the Invest India team. So if you had a liaison office or someone present in the state level who could pick up our project and push it across, that would be a really good opportunity. And a clear roadmap in terms of what you need to do when, and when things will happen. For example, as investors, we have capital invested. We need to tell our suppliers when we'll be able to get the projects on track and when the production can start. And we are not able to do that. And that's because we don't have clarity on how long it takes at each stage. So if you have an online portal where you could track your progress of your project in terms of where your project is, when you could expect a reply or an approval, or what is required to give you the approval, that would be very useful. And also you could have a chronological detail of events on when it happened, so there is traceability on the performance of each division or each individual. And also if you could have a system to escalate the process to the next level in case there is a delay or an issue, that will also be very useful for the investor. Build investor confidence. As you say, put your mouth where your money is. If you tell your investors that if there is a delay from outside, we will compensate you, that builds confidence. That tells the investor that the government is serious about bringing in foreign investors to come into the country. So we would appreciate something like that if you're able to do. Tax, I think there is a lot of benefits that have come across. One area I would say is that the GST, because we normally have to pay the GST before we get our money from the suppliers because of the credit terms that was applied, but not a major issue. And last important thing, return on time invested, or ROT. Like we said, I've been there many times, and every time we are told that things would happen at a particular pace, but unfortunately, I think we could really use as investors a better return on the effort that we put in, and that would really give more confidence to more investors to come forward and promote our country to become more self-reliant. And not only self-reliant, but also to be a major exporter, because I truly believe there is a huge potential for India to be a global leader in terms of export and bringing our economy forth into a much greater height. And unless we focus on the how and not just the what, I don't think that we will reach there in the speed that we would like to reach there. And with that, I'd like to thank all of you for having me, and I'd be happy to share any or answer any questions that you have on this particular topic. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Nishad Azim, for your wonderful presentation. I think there are lots of points that you've mentioned. Many of those relate to Invest India, the work that they have been doing. And I would request Varun to be ready to answer some of the suggestions and questions that have been mentioned in your presentation. Especially one wherein you have mentioned about the disconnect with the state governments and whether Invest India, how they are doing the hand-holding on that particular aspect. I would also request you, Mr. Nishad Azim, once we finish the presentations, to dwell a little bit upon how more Indian companies can leverage any opportunities that FIFA might provide, which is one point that you mentioned in your presentation. From our side, of course, you've mentioned about compensation from government agencies for delays. I can say that definitely automatic approvals is something that that many state governments and central government for approvals is something that has been in the pipeline. Many states have done these reforms, and hopefully we will continue to go forward on that path so that your roti is maximized to the extent possible. I would now request Mr. Vikas Honda, who is manager with Gulf Tech Arabia, to make his presentation and remarks.
Vikas, you're on mute. Sorry. Can you hear me now? Am I audible? Yes. Thank you, Vipul. Good morning, ladies, gentlemen, Honorable Minister, and dignitaries. My name is Vikas Honda. I'm founder and managing director of Gulf Tech Arabia. We manufacture oil and gas equipment in Saudi Arabia. I've spent last 25 years in Middle East and Europe in setting up various companies in manufacturing sector. The reason we chose to set up manufacturing in Saudi Arabia was simple. It was due to the fact that Aramco has a fantastic local manufacturing program called Activa, wherein they enforce their contractors and service companies to buy locally manufactured products. So when, for example, say ArcelorMittal sets up a steel mill in Saudi, offtake is near guaranteed. That's how the countries in GCC are attracting the international manufacturers and world leaders to come and set up manufacturing in country. Saudi Arabia, for example, has been able to grow their non-oil sector GDP at faster rate than the oil sector GDP. And that's only by focusing on their in-country manufacturing program. To the extent that now they are rolling it out to other sectors like mining and healthcare. They are the most populated country in GCC. So they are now asking global healthcare equipment suppliers to manufacture equipment locally. Other countries in GCC are also following suit, like UAE and Oman. They have come up with their own in-country value programs. Like us, they have many challenges as well. They have infrastructure, but untrained workforce. So we Indians actually do the job and fill the gap. On the other hand, we have trained workforce and developing infrastructure. They are not democracies. They don't have opposition. We are democracies. We have opposition. In a nutshell, what GCC countries are doing is leveraging their buying power to target global technology leaders to ensure that they come and set up their manufacturing locally. This not only helps them to grow non-oil sector, but elevates their country's technological competencies. So if ONGC gets a concession in GCC, like the minister talked about Abu Dhabi Zakum field, they have to follow suit and they have to ensure that they purchase locally produced products However, they don't do it in India because our policies are not yet able to enforce that. One of the reasons is that we don't have the best of the global product leaders manufacturing quality products in India. And the domestic manufacturers have not caught up yet. So in my experience and in my humble opinion, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. I've served on various boards of globally renowned manufacturers, and I can say that they'll be happy to set up locally manufacturing products in India if and only if our policies make it prerequisite for them. So we need to do a bit of whether you call it dangle a carrot or cajole them. But we've got an enormous market, which is very attractive for global manufacturers. So in order to summarize, good news is that we have one of the largest market, large reserves of natural resources and talent base in India. We need to leverage that, what we have, in addition to leveraging our energy partnership with GCC. Under the patronage of Ambassador Asaf Ahmed, we have a very active and thriving Saudi India business network here locally, which can not only help to attract global manufacturers to set up manufacturing bases in India, but also help Indian companies to gain foothold and market share in GCC and make Bharat Atmanirbhar to exporting Bharat. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Vikas Honda, for your presentation. I would now request Mr. Sridhar Iyengar, CFO, Aerospace, Renewables and ICT of Mubadala Investment Company. Of course, it's one of the largest sovereign wealth funds. And having known Sridhar a little bit during my posting in Dubai, I think there are lots and lots of things that India and the sovereign wealth funds in Abu Dhabi are doing. So it will be very interesting to listen to his perspective on how we can take the help and work together in the vision of Atmanirbhar Bharat going forward. Sridhar.
Thank you so much, Vipul. Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Okay. Thank you so much, Vipul, and great to connect in your new role. In fact, Honorable Minister of State, Sri Muralidharan, respected Indian ambassadors to the Gulf regions, distinguished panelists, and a very good morning, in fact, to everyone. Hope you and your families are safe and healthy. I take this opportunity to thank Ambassador Pawan Kapoor and the organizers for giving me the opportunity to present Mubadala and present our views. Today, I'll be talking to you about the fantastic bilateral relationship that India and UAE have shared over a long time. And more specifically, I'll walk you through Mubadala's vision and our investment journey. Firstly, let me give you a little bit of background, as Vipul said about Mubadala. Once again, I'm having a little bit of problems on the presentation. Let me just. Yeah. So coming back, in fact, Mubadala is a key participant and the primary public vehicle in Abu Dhabi's strategy to diversify its economy and implementing Abu Dhabi's Economic Vision 2030. Mubadala's rating and outlook are aligned with those of the government of Abu Dhabi. It's a AA2 stable according to Moody's and AA as per Standards & Poor's. One of our core values is partnership. We strongly believe that together we achieve more. The ethos of partnership has always been at the heart of Mubadala's approach. Our investment philosophy centers on the founding, nurturing, and cementing of these partnerships that we build across the world, whether it is at the government-to-government level or at a company-to-company level. Mubadala is amongst the largest state-owned investment funds in the world, with more than dirhams 853 billion, or just over $232 billion in assets under management. So if you see the map, in fact, in front of you, we invest across all asset classes to generate sustainable risk-adjusted returns. We have investments in businesses in more than 50 countries and 7 international offices outside of UAE. Our portfolio can be classified as 40% in fund investments, 32% in direct investments, and 38% in investments in the UAE. As explained earlier, Mubadala's investment philosophy is centered on founding of world-class partnerships. So let me zoom out and explain a bit about UAE's relationships with India before zooming in on Mubadala's vision and investment journey within India. The UAE's deep as well as strong relationship with India is well known. Generations of Indians have lived here in the UAE, grown businesses, as well as build their professional careers. My own story goes as such. After having worked in what was then called Bombay or Mumbai, now for around 8 years, I came to the shores of UAE and since have worked for more than 2 decades in what has become my Karma Bhumi. India-UAE trade is valued at at $60 billion, making UAE India's third largest trading partner after China and US. Moreover, UAE is the second largest export destination of India after the US. We have seen the challenges thrown by COVID-19. The timeline for recovery is still uncertain. At the same time, we have started seeing some light at the end of the tunnel, with some countries, including UAE, announcing vaccine rollouts. In my mind, the values of partnership and multilateral collaboration have become even more relevant today than ever. One of the key lessons the pandemic has taught us is that economies need to become more local. At the same time, retain the global competitive advantage. Being more local at the same time doesn't mean one doesn't seek help or leverage itself with strategic partners. Mubadala has always believed in the power of strategic partnerships and collaboration. We are ready to build the foundation to support India's drive towards self-sufficiency or Atmanirbhar as we are discussing today. We have a long-term vision towards India and its growth story, as is strongly underpinned by an investment of over $2 billion even during the pandemic. Why is India economic vision attractive for UAE and for a company like Mubadala? Now, one can go through various steps that the government of India has taken during more recently, in fact, in putting a lot of robust and easier legal, commercial, and investor-friendly framework. Let me take this opportunity of congratulating the Invest India team. Varun spoke about it, for winning the 2020 United Nations Investment Promotion Award. Going back to the investment landscape, India has a target for a 1.5 trillion capex in the next 5 years. To finance this ambitious target, India has introduced various reforms, including removal of dividend withdrawal tax, introduction of InvIT, REIT, and tax waivers for certain sovereign wealth funds and other pension funds. Furthermore, the government is setting up a nodal agency of key secretaries from various governmental departments who will handhold key investors in their investment journey, also featuring the concept of a single point of contact. As an investor, Mubadala has been at the forefront of FDI into India. What we have seen is some great investment opportunities that we have invested in India. Our most recent deal was 853 million investment into Reliance. Back, we had invested 1.2 billion in the telco and digital services space, Jio, also a Reliance subsidiary. Last year, Master, our renewable energy platform, had invested 150 million in Hero Future Energies. Hero operates over 1.5 giga of capacity across wind and solar and is poised for growth as the renewable energy markets within India continues to expand. With an announced range of 175 gigawatts of capacity by 2022, we certainly see a very promising outlook for the Indian renewables industry, which will help our platform in India to leverage upon these growth opportunities. Before our Hero Future investment, the Breed, the largest district cooling provider in which Mubadala holds a substantial stake, entered into a 30-year concession for a contracted cooling capacity of 20,000 refrigerated tons to build India's first district cooling system in Amravati. This, by the way, was the Breed's first plant outside the GCC market. To show a commitment towards India, the Breed had set up an office in India around 2.5 years back. Additionally, through SoftBank's Vision Fund, we have invested in 8 Indian companies, accounting for almost $7 billion. These include companies like Paytm, Oyo, Ola, Grofers, Flipkart earlier. All in all, we as Mubadala, we have invested around $3 billion in India. The Atmanirbhar Bharat program that we are discussing today calls for building a self-reliant country. India's infrastructure sector, both digital and physical, in my view and in our company's view, will continue to need a lot of investment, and the build out of this infrastructure will be a driver of growth in other areas of the Indian economy. Mubadala's experience in enabling infrastructure opportunities will act as an enabler for India for us to transfer knowledge, build capacity, and also be a gateway for the long-term capital to India. This is exactly our long-term ambition as Mubadala. Also, there's a key point I want to just put in front of the august audience today. Investing in India is also proving to be rewarding, not just from a financial perspective, but also as a responsible investor looking to create change and uplifting communities through our investments. We believe we are only at the start of our journey into India. Mubadala remains committed to the India story long term, bringing together long-term capital, expertise in critical areas, and a partnership approach to support India's ambitions. I thank the organizers for giving me the opportunity of voicing our opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Sridhar, especially for your focus on the renewable energy side and the new technologies and what you mentioned as the need for continued investments into both digital and physical infrastructure in India, and the role that Mubadala is playing and also ADIA is playing in this quest for development in India. So now we have finished all the presentations. We are running about 15 to 20 minutes late, and Honorable Minister has another engagement. Thank you, sir, for sitting through these presentations. We will have a few questions. There are a few remarks that we have also, comments that we have also received on our social media channels. And we would want to wrap this up in about 20 minutes. But first of all, I would just request all of you to thank, and from my side, thank Honorable Minister for gracing this occasion, and we will then take some of the questions.
Thank you all for the presentations that you have made. It was really interesting to hear all your suggestions. I'm sure that we will be working on those suggestions that you have made. Anyhow, our secretary is here. He will be responding to some of the queries, and in the coming days we will work in detail on those suggestions and proposals that you have made. So I'm sorry that I'll have to leave now.
Sure. Thank you, sir. Well, let me take the opportunity. So let me first of all pose a question to Sridhar, and that is on the food security side. And I would also request if Secretary General FICCI is here, if he can also perhaps respond to it, because food security is one of the areas, as we are saying, as the Gulf is for energy security for India. If India could be similarly for food security for the Gulf, and what more can be done in this sector together, so that we can attract more investments into India on food security side, and that would also help the Gulf countries. So if someone, Sridhar, if you could say something on it, and if any other participant wants to say something on food security side.
So, thanks, Vipul. In fact, extremely key and critical area for both India and the Gulf, and the COVID has just exacerbated the need for food security in general for every country. The Gulf and especially UAE and India have been working on this critical initiative for some time now. It is not Mubadala per se working on this. There are other agencies within UAE which are coordinating and cooperating and collaborating with India on this particular initiative. There's a lot which has happened so far. There's still a lot of journey to be traversed, in fact, on the food security angle. There is definitely, a need for reforms, which you see right now. In fact, India going through some of the farm reforms and all that, and also at the same time, there's an opposition and a voice of protest. In general, in fact, I think the reforms are required, and at some point, in fact, you will see a more open and a clean way of trading in food in general. So that's the local side of it. From an international point of view, in fact, what really would attract investors is exactly a lot of all these reforms. In fact, nodal agencies, single point of contact. We had a one-on-one with the Prime Minister in the recent past, and these were exactly discussions that the Prime Minister was actually encouraging us to put forth on what do you want to see, in fact. So it is not, some of my distinguished panelists spoke about tax reforms. Yes, of course, they are required. These are actually financial benefits that one would gain as an investor. More importantly, what the financial investor is looking at is a open, robust, clean framework, so that the rules, regulations are not changing every time, and every sort of a regime changes in a particular state. In fact, the investors should be pretty much confident that certain framework of rules continue. So these are things, in fact, which we did voice with the Prime Minister, with the Honorable Prime Minister, when we had the one-on-one. So I would like to raise these again, Vipul. And there's a lot the government has done. In fact, there's a lot the government is doing. And these are, like the best part actually about what we are seeing even today is, as a government, as a body, in fact, you guys are ready to listen. And you're listening to the investors and also actioning these suggestions that the investors are putting forth. So the listening part and the actioning part, I think keep doing it more is what I would say.
Well, thank you, Sridhar. I don't know if anyone else wants to come into on the food security side.
Can I come in, Dilip, after Dr. Puri, please? Okay.
Yes. Please, Mr. Dilip Chunal.
No, I'll come in after Aman Puri, please. Dr. Puri, please go ahead, then I'll come in after you.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
I
Thank you
didn't
so
know that
much.
Aman is joined us. Yeah, Aman. Thanks.
Sir, as you're aware, sir, we just hosted the UAE India Food Security Summit 2020 in collaboration with Invest India and CII. And one of the ideas which was discussed by the stakeholders in this sector was the possibility of creating a kind of a strategic food reserve in the UAE, which could support the supplies not only for UAE but also for the entire GCC region and beyond, and the MENA region. So what is being thought about is that since some of the importers here in the UAE already maintain a buffer stock, the idea is to create that kind of reliable source of supplies. The government of Punjab is also working on a proposal because they understood this idea and they feel that they would be in a position to make sure that they can keep some reserves for this region, so to say, so that there is a buffer stock in the UAE which can actually be used for this entire region. So I think the stakeholders are working on this, and this idea could be looked at further. Thank you.
So if I could come in, sir, just
Aman. Now Mr. Dilip Chennai.
Thank you. So, I think in the food security aspect, there are two different parts of it. One is, the agricultural produce, and the other is value added. And I think if we can get a lot of joint ventures and partners going in the value addition part, and very recently, in fact, it's under works. The government has allowed this PLI scheme, which is a product led incentive scheme, where actually you can form joint ventures to scale up ready to eat and other such sectors, which will be an opportunity for us to ensure that there's a huge other supply going. And also the other aspect is there are many states where the reforms have already been done. So we can look at those states and working with those states and seeing, because I'm aware of some of the conversations that Sridhar has had with different states and other people have had with different states. So, it's actually the integrated thing. Farming is one aspect, the logistics, the whole thing to cold chain, to port, and the whole storage facility, like Dr. Puri said, we'll have to look at increasing the strategic storage capacity in the Gulf region. So there's a lot of opportunity there, and it makes actually business sense, for this. So it's a great opportunity going ahead.
So if I can add to this as well.
Yeah, Varun. Varun, if you can wait, because you have to speak on the other thing as well.
Right.
I have our ambassador in Abu Dhabi, Mr. Pawan Kapoor, who wants to make a point. And I also have a comment, someone who has said that we should also consider having export promotion wings through the PBD. Of course, I think not the PBD. This is the general suggestion, I think, for our embassies. Maybe Ambassador Pawan Kapoor can also handle a little bit about this export promotion wing thing, this comment that someone has made. In fact, it's Polam Vijay Kumar Yadav who has made this comment on one of our social media channels. Sir, Ambassador Pawan Kapoor.
Thanks, Vipul. As Aman has spoken about this side of the infrastructure, about the kind of facilities or a strategic food reserve to build. But I think one of the very important things in which, was obviously highlighted in this food security summit and what has been being talked on for a long time. You heard Sridhar talk about their investments of Mubadala. The one big issue when Varun spoke about the 75 billion that has been committed in infrastructure, a fair share of that, or that chunk of that, of 5 to 7 billion is expected in what is called the India UAE Food Corridor project. Now, this is a key one which has still not really taken off. And I think this is what we need to look at, how we can, assure investors that this is where they need to come in. Now, there are some companies which have been in touch, of course, with Invest India. He spoke about DP World, he spoke about Emaar. Now, there are those who are investing in some logistics, warehousing, cold chain facilities of their own. But I think on the whole, the key factor that is holding this back is a decision on which state the appropriate land which is to be provided to the companies, etc., which is not clear. Now, Sridhar was very polite when he spoke about the fact that, Tabreed did this thing and in Andhra Pradesh, but he hinted at the fact that a change in the state's regime or the change in government does not often lead to a continuation of its same policies. And I think in Andhra Pradesh, we have seen that to our own detriment. So this same thing is happening with us, even in the case of Maharashtra, where we are looking at a massive investment in the oil refinery by Saudi Aramco and ADNOC. And that is also still not moving forward, and the costs have gone up a lot. I mean, without getting into details, the point is that this necessity of ensuring that policies that the government of India is pushing, stay, steady despite any change of state government is very critical for us. And I think that's the same point here for the food security. But we definitely have to look at this food security project in India, that side, because there is, as I said, and we spoke about here, the fact that the potential for employment opportunities in India, if you go in for this massive contract farming, is so much. Mr. Juma Al-Kait, the undersecretary from the Ministry of Economy of the UAE, speaking at this summit 2 days ago, talked about 200,000 jobs. Now, when we are talking of Atmanirbhar Bharat, if we can create this kind of employment in this sector, that would be of great help. So that's the one point I did want to make. In terms of export promotion councils, I mean, the fact of the matter is that, we're always open to more suggestions of how to do this. But if the idea, we are, of course, working very keenly with our export promotion agencies in India. With APIDA alone, we've had a couple of recent conferences bringing in food importers from the UAE to see how we can improve, their facilitation of more imports from India. Similarly, we're working with the different export promotion councils, including on the engineering side, on food and garments. So we're doing almost every month. We're trying to do these, events. Of course, these days in the virtual mode. But now, this is also leading to interesting innovation techniques. We've got these e-exhibition of, which people are able to participate in. Obviously, this requires a slightly different mindset, which we're all adjusting to. But whatever suggestions they are, we would be happy to take them on board. Thank you.
Vipul, if I can just add to what Ambassador said.
Yes, Sridhar, please.
Thank you, Vipul. Thank you, Ambassador, for raising that point. In fact, about challenges we have had in this specific investment, and this was one of the discussions we were having with the Prime Minister. Saying, as we have the Invest India Forum or the hand holding of an investor during the investment journey, we need to have some type of a central agency or a central bureau, which is also hand holding the investor throughout, if at all there is an issue or a challenge during the investment. And that's more a central agency rather than, once the investment is done, the investor should not be left to handle the challenge on their own. So that's another suggestion, in fact, to the organizers.
Well, thank you, Sridhar. I would now want to give the floor to Varun. I think you have increased the complexity for him because he has to now answer both how to face the challenge of handholding during the investment cycle, and also I would want him to comment on the on handholding with respect to state governments. If Invest India can help us in some aspects on this thing. I don't know if Varun is there, but if he's here, Varun, please, if you can answer.
Thank you, sir. I'm still here. I hope you can hear me. It's been a privilege to work with Mr. Azim and Mr. Iyengar in facilitating their investments. And as they rightly mentioned, there are challenges on the ground in kind of converting those projects. And rightly, as Ambassador Kapoor and Dr. Puri mentioned also that food security is one critical element. And during the high-level task forum where the Honorable CIM was there, in UAE, that was one of the issues that was brought up. But one thing I would like to highlight and bring to the knowledge of the distinguished panel is that, these suggestions have been taken into account and there's work happening on ground onto these. So one key element, what has happened recently in the last 2 months during the COVID time, is setting up of project development cells. Each ministry has set up a project development cell, which is now headed by the Cabinet Secretariat. And there's a regular reporting and a meeting of empowered group of secretaries to understand how these mega projects or large projects are moving, what are the challenges, either in terms of central government or state governments, and how can we expedite. So, officials at the level of Joint Secretary are taking review meetings at regular intervals. We do have meetings every week, every alternate week on different aspects to understand what challenges are there and how can these be resolved. So that's one part on the project development cell. So the other part, Mr. Azim also mentioned, categorization of projects and, how do you liaison well between the central and the state authorities. So what is happening at the moment is we're trying to use leverage technology to bring in accountability into the system. So there's a single window mechanism which is being currently worked out. So as we speak, the process has already been initiated. Our teams are already meeting different ministries, the central ministries, to understand how many different licenses are required, what are the redundancies in the system, how can you streamline it, benchmark it, and then kind of put an online system where maybe, deemed approval and clear timelines are given. So this process is already in, this work is already in progress, but it'll take some time before we kind of see some action on the ground. In terms of state offices, what is happening is, we are in the process and it's been approved by our board and the members as well. We are in the process of setting up our units in different state governments. And eventually what's going to happen is, each state government would have a representative at the central ministry or the central body to kind of ease out the clearances and the whole process itself. So this is work in progress, but we expect by, early next year, we will start seeing action and results on ground.
Well, thank you, Varun. That's, I think, good news. I think that should alleviate some of the concerns that people have articulated here, and which we have listened to for quite some time. I think now I will give the floor again to Mr. Nishad Azim. There were one or two queries that we had with respect to him on FIFA. There's also one comment that we have received on our social media channel about the opportunities of working on renewable energy with Qatar apart from gas. I don't know if he can handle that, but if he can, that will be good. So, Mr. Azim.
Okay, thank you. So with regards to, I was expecting this question because everybody is excited about FIFA, and also the government is also very keen on promoting FIFA with the Indian subcontinent, and also expecting a huge turnaround from the Indian fans to come to Qatar. And as we speak, there is a committee that the Indian ambassador, Dr. Mittal, and his team are putting together along with the Indian Business Council to identify opportunities for Indian companies to come into Qatar, and not only with the services but also with products. And one of the key concerns, or one of the key areas I think in companies from India need to look at is, in opportunities are in F&B and IT and other services, and also, of course, skilled manpower, which has always been one of our key strengths. When it comes to F&B, we say that India or Indian products has a huge market share, or relatively huge market share. But that is from a captive audience. You have 700,000 out of the 2.8 million are Indians, so definitely they will buy Indian products. I think what we need to look at as Indian companies is what percentage of the non-captive audience are actually buying our products. And if you look at that perspective, we'll find that our share is very, very low. And why is that not happening? We say, okay, let's promote export. Let us bring more companies in. But before we do that, what does the customer need? You need to clearly know what will sell. So one of the key things that we have found out was, of course, the packaging. So the way we package our products is, relatively for the Indian consumer. What we sell in India, we try to sell it straight away into the international market. That doesn't work. So you'll find a product that is, made in India, maybe equal or superior quality with a product that is made somewhere in Europe, and this could be like 3 times more expensive than the Indian product, but people buy this because it's well packaged, it's presented well. So this is an area where we would like our Indian manufacturers to look at more keenly. And of course, we have opportunities in IT sector. There will be huge demands related to IT sector coming up. And of course, anyone who is interested, we would be happy to support them through the Indian Business Council. And manpower, is, like we said, is another key area. In terms of the renewable energy, Qatar has a huge project coming up for the solar farm coming up. And they've created a new company called Siraj Power, which will be, and this project is under Marubeni and Total, and in partnership with China Power. So predominantly, most of the panels and all will be coming from China Power, and will be funded by these two investors, and power will be sold to Siraj Power, and then, of course, into the local grid. We, as a local manufacturer, we are supplying we are planning to supply most of the support systems, which is locally manufactured in Qatar. So you need, if anybody wants to look at renewable energy, predominantly in terms of solar, there are key aspects again which you have to look at: the climatic conditions. We have surface temperatures are up to 73 degrees. And there's a huge variance in temperature from day to night. At night it could be about 38 degrees, and at daytime surface temperature could be 73 degrees, 75 degrees. So can our products stand up to this sort of temperature variance? Because you have to specifically make it for GCC conditions. Another issues we have is in terms of the dust collection. You need to have a coating on the system which will allow for easy cleaning or repel dust. So adaptation of the product to the local market, that is one of the key aspects if you want to succeed and be a major player in the market. And this is what I think every company needs to understand, that you cannot copy paste a product which is back in India into the international market.
Well, thank you very much for your intervention. I think we are running quite late right now, but I do have a few comments that we have received on social media. One is from Mr. Rajpal Tyagi, a PBSA awardee from Kuwait, who has said that there are lots of investment opportunities in the private healthcare domain in Kuwait. And are there any special investment vehicles or mechanisms under Atmanirbhar Bharat that will enable our industry to build a special partnership with Kuwait in this regard? I'm not going to go into this right now because all these questions I think cannot be taken, but the point is well taken. And I think on healthcare, it is well understood in Government of India that this could be one of the areas of focus in Atmanirbhar Bharat. And we should have different ways of promoting this abroad as well. The question, just to identify on the renewable energy from Qatar, was by Mr. Ayapparaj Vishwanathan. We also have some comments that we have received from Bahrain, especially about food sector and entrepreneurship, that perhaps we would wish to connect the questioner with Mr. Dadabai directly. I'm not sure if any of the panelists right now on any of the issues that we have covered, if they want to make any intervention, I would request them to do it now. And then we would conclude this panel discussion by concluding remarks from our Secretary, CPV and OIA, Sri Sanjay Bhattacharya ji. So if anyone wants to make any intervention right now, please do tell us. I think Mr. Dilip Chinoy wants to say something right now.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that, on the renewable thing and with the particular state concerned, President Fiki actually arranged a series of meetings. So there are two different issues in the thing. One is the signing of the new PPAs, and the other one is the agreement of the agreement with the old PPAs. So we divided the two issues, and we actually had a meeting on the new PPAs with the investors. The CEO of the joint venture companies actually flew down and had a meeting And I think there will be some movement on that going forward. And just as an illustration that if there's something even at the company level or something, and you want us to work with the state government, while Invest India, does the wheels within government, we will try and navigate other avenues as well. So I just wanted to make this intervention. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chinoy. I don't think we have any other intervention right now, so I would request Secretary CPV and OIA to make his concluding remarks for this panel discussion. So.
Thank you, Vipul. I think it's been a fascinating discussion, a very useful one. Firstly, the key points that came out, the Minister of State set out the stage. I think there is unanimity across all the panelists that the historical nature, the very close connections between the Gulf and India do provide for enormous goodwill. And I think we have that as the basis on which we proceed. Traditionally, the relationship has been focused largely on the human resource and the energy security aspects. And I think some of the panelists also mentioned as to how they continue to be very relevant and how there are new kinds of opportunities that are present in both these areas. For instance, in the energy security area, one of the panelists mentioned as to how there are opportunities for new investments in the existing hydrocarbon sector in terms of infrastructure, pipelines, technology, and also in terms of renewable energies, because that is the way in which the Gulf is also moving, and the greater sense of collaboration that is necessary. Also the possibilities of third country partnerships, so that energy pillar will continue to be very, very important and relevant. On the human resource pillar as well, I think there were mentioned, and some of the, despite the changing nature within the Gulf, we do see that there is a certain preference for the Indian migrant professional and the Indian worker as well, and they would continue to contribute to the development of the region. And in that aspect, there may be specific instances, for instance, the FIFA that is coming up, or specific expos that come up, in which the Indians could play a very specific role. But what I gathered from the presentations of all the panelists was that they do see that the partnership is evolving, and it has indeed evolved to a very large extent. And this evolution is now marked in certain new forms of cooperation, which will acquire greater prominence and salience. And two of these that came up were the aspects of food security and health security. And I think there are many mechanisms that are currently underway to try and reinforce and define what these two would be. For instance, from Dubai and Abu Dhabi, we heard how investments are being planned for these large farms, perhaps for contract farming, how there can be dedicated networks in which we can have these food links, how we can have better packaging, as somebody said, to appeal to the non-Indian community present over there, how we can get into other products. But I think when we talk of food security, that is in a sense a catch-all for what the trade ministers have been discussing about the trade in goods. And in this, there are certain other aspects as well, because as we look at the question of trade between our two sides, there are new items that have come up in terms of non-tariff issues, of SPS issues, and the residue levels that are there. And I think these are issues that we collaboratively need to resolve as we move ahead. The second broad catch-all area that was mentioned, and this was mentioned by several panelists, was the one about health security, about pharmaceuticals, healthcare systems, digital health. And in a sense, I see this as the overall spectrum of collaboration in the services sector, as to how we can then also work together on other issues like education, IT, fintech, and so on. So I think those are some of the new emerging areas. What was also discussed, and I think the modalities, is that obviously investments is becoming an extremely important element as we look at the cooperation and the partnership between the two sides. And in this, the role of the sovereign wealth funds is going to become increasingly important. The very useful presentation by Mudabla said a couple of very important points, which I will just repeat because Sridhar mentioned that economics needs to be local but have global competitiveness. And I think when you have competitive funding coming in, these are aspects that would become important. Also, he referred that in the context of investing in India, in the context of Atmanirbhar Bharat, the investment would not only be profitable, but would also give the signal of being responsible investors. So I think that is a very important pillar of investments that we will have to look at. The two other aspects, and I think in a sense they're very closely related, is about the collaboration in technologies, particularly in high and emerging technologies, and in the resulting innovations and startups that happen. And I think if we look at this in a more holistic manner, we would see that the investment that Indian parties can probably have in some of the growth centers of high technology, or be it blockchain or artificial intelligence, or in the innovation hubs and startups in the Gulf area that are emerging, particularly, as somebody had said, the kind of leverage that the buying power of the Gulf provides is that these will become great hubs, and India needs to plug into these aspects. But also at the same time, we must be very cognizant that there are several concerns. I do applaud the presentation from Invest India, and not just their presentation, but their role in the manner in which they have been able to connect potential investors to the actual investment on the ground. But I think despite that, there were a number of issues that were brought up regarding concerns that we as a government take full note of and that we would wish to address. Some of these referred to the coordination with the state governments, the roadmap so that you know what the timelines are, whether a certain specific forum can be created. And actually, in some ways, as I think Varun also mentioned at some point, this has been created to some extent, that a special forum has been created for some of these strategic investments. But I think the state coordination, the roadmap, and I think the aspect about continuity of rules and policies, this is something that is extremely important. I know Pawan also referred to that in his comments. So these are some of the issues that we do have to look at and address. But at the end of the day, I thank you all for your excellent presentations because they provide us with a certain intuition and certain detail that is important as we craft our way forward. As you know, we call the region now our extended neighborhood. And when we call a region our neighborhood, it has not only a certain policy implication, it also has a certain cultural and fraternal affiliation. And that, in a sense, defines the crux of the relationship that we are engaged in. So let me say that this augurs well for the partnership that we seek to weave. We see there is momentum and dynamism in the relationship. We are reinforcing our traditional areas, but we're also eagerly looking out for new areas of cooperation, at the same time being cognizant of some of the lacunae that are present in the system and the need to continuously be in reform mode. Thank you very much for this lovely presentation.
Well, thank you, sir, for your concluding remarks, which captured all the presentations and the interventions that have been made in this fascinating panel, the fascinating discussion that we had today. I would, on my behalf, on behalf of the ministry, want to formally thank all of you, all the panelists for joining us today. Mr. Dilip Chinoy, Varun Sood, Mr. Mohammad Dadabhai from Bahrain, Mr. Samir Ketkar from Oman, Mr. Pradeep Honda from Kuwait, Mr. Nishad Azim from Qatar, Mr. Vikas Honda from Saudi Arabia, and Mr. Sridhar Iyengar from UAE. Thank you all for joining us. I would also like your colleagues, ambassadors, consul general also joined us for this panel discussion, and I would request them join us for the next panel discussion on India GCC that we are going to have from 3:30 onwards for 2 hours, where we would be focusing on. Let me end here by thanking all of you once again. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Bye-bye.